Good morning. My name is Austin Rainwater, and I'll be giving a final reflection on my experience with D&D. In Dungeons & Dragons, and most tabletop role-playing games, there are two main roles at the table. For most players, they'll step into the shoes of a single character and make decisions as that character. The character someone plays may change, such as if they're in a different campaign or someone misses, or in the dreaded event of a player character death. Every new character looks different, has different motivations, and tells a different story, but the player will almost always act as one at any given time. A small, unfortunate percentage of D&D participants step into the role of Dungeon Master. I'll avoid repetition because the role of the Dungeon Master has already been described, but in short, the DM narrates the environment in which the rest of the players and their characters act, and the result of those actions. Every person at the table plays a role in determining the tone of the game, but the role the DM plays is one of the biggest. In case you didn't catch it earlier, I'm one of those unfortunate souls who has stepped into the role of Dungeon Master. I'm honored to stand here today and give a reflection on what it's taught me. The gratitude I feel at this podium is similar to the gratitude I feel every time a group of people gathers at the table and puts up with my shenanigans. My start as a DM was about 2 years ago. I didn't start by delving into handbooks and ancient scrolls, practicing with a devoted pact of masters of the dungeon, and summoning wisdom in the depths of YouTube before I started my first campaign. I was a new player in a campaign at a local game shop in rural Michigan. Being rural, many people traveled pretty far to be a part of the campaign, and the person who was DMing was in it for the wrong reasons and was pretty flaky. One day he just stopped showing up, so I read the campaign and took over. Here's the thing, on paper, I'm not a very good DM. For one thing, I'm not very good at role-playing the non-player characters. I'm especially bad at voices, and even more terrible at accents. I'll save you the demonstration, but I will share some feedback I recently got from my daughter trying to do the voices while reading her a bedtime story. Why does the octopus sound like that? I'm an anxious introvert with autism. When the spotlight is on me, my amygdala goes into hyperdrive. It hijacks my thinking and abstracts the pathways between the parts of my brain that I need for fluid, descriptive language, improvising when a character asks an NPC a question I wasn't expecting, or remembering complex rules and narratives. You know, the things a dungeon master needs to function. And can I tell you a secret? If you're in one of my campaigns, please cover your ears for this part. There's still so much about the basic rules I don't fully grasp, like spellcasting. I can't tell you off the top of my head how to calculate what a monster needs to roll not to get affected by a player's spell. I'll often just trust that the players know the rules of the class and listen to what they say. Of course, I do practice these things, and I do think that shows up, but they take time to learn, and I still think these are weaknesses I possess as a DM. Nonetheless, the feedback I receive is usually positive. When I took over that campaign a few years ago, I was certain in the first session I had doomed the campaign and the party to dissolve. To my surprise, people expressed excitement and were eager to play in the next session. Not a great improviser. I can make an in-character decision for a villain to flee, but I may not have the wherewithal to describe the expression on his face, the sweat dripping from his brow, or the scurried, panicked steps as he ducks into the shadows. The only reason I'm describing it now is it's right here in front of me. My notes are a mess, and I often have to look at character stats and rules and pause to do so. So what is it that brings people back to the table? I'll tell you what I think is a cornerstone of a good DM, and I'll borrow one of the Unitarian Universalist values. A good DM ensures that every person is inherently worthy and has a right to flourish with dignity, love, and compassion. This applies in life and at the table. People have a lot of reasons they come to the table. Games are a neutral way to connect with other people. That's what brought me to the game shop 2 years ago. For some, pretending to be someone else gives them a much-needed escape from this world. Some use it as a creative or comedic outlet. For example, I'm working on a warlock sloth who moves 1/3 the speed of standard characters, but can cast Mage Hand, which creates an astral hand to carry itself around the battlefield. There's also the stories, the drama, complex geopolitics, mysterious circumstances, and mystical settings. Some people join because they're bored on Saturday, January 24th, about 2 weeks ago, and remember, hey, didn't that one Austin guy say that dragons and demons, or whatever it's called, was happening today? Maybe I'll check it out. Some people join to tell their own stories, or as a safe place to explore some part of themselves at the table, distant from the real world consequences. One of my favorite examples of this is a character played by Allie Beardsley in the D&D show Fantasy High. Now, I won't spoil it too much in case you decide to watch it, and I would recommend it because it's on the streaming platform Dropout, which is a great example of ethical streaming platforms. But in the show, or in D&D, there are pantheons of gods, each who has authority over a specific domain. Allie's character, Kristen, begins as a high school freshman and the chosen one of Helio, the god of corn. In the campaign, the Church of Helio draws a lot of parallels to the Christianity that I grew up with, a community bound by xenophobic, blind faith. In the beginning of the campaign, Kristen has a chance to meet Helio, and in the final moments of this encounter, she takes the opportunity to ask a simple question. Why is there so much suffering in the world? Helio's response is to say, bye, dismiss her question, and send her back to the mortal realm, starting Kristen on a journey of deconstruction. In the campaign, Kristen ends up at odds with her community, including the church, leaders in her school, and even her own parents. And Allie has stated in interviews that Kristen's experience mirrors their own with the Christian church. More often than not, all of those reasons I stated before, people come to a table for a mix of those reasons, and more. On top of their hopes, players come to the table with different experiences with D&D, comfort with the rules, and their own backgrounds. But Dungeons & Dragons isn't just about the rules. There are quests and deaths, but those don't necessarily equate to winning and losing. As a player, you decide your character's goals, what success looks like for you, and you have an opportunity to express yourself through your character in a multitude of ways. My job as the Dungeon Master is to create a safe environment to do that. As a DM, I have the responsibility and the joy to understand what everyone is hoping for at the table and tune myself and the story to those hopes. This means that even though I've run the same campaign 4 different times, the narrative, the outcome, the tones have been wildly different every single time. That's the power of including everyone at the table. You get something unique every time. As a side note, I'll add that I am so grateful to have played with incredible groups of people who have accepted me as a dungeon master with all of my imperfections. The result is a game that has the ability to impact people even once they've walked away from the table. The quests and the battles and the chaos, they're all fictitious, but they're powerful because they draw parallels to the quests and the battles and the chaos in our own lives. As a player, or as a person rather, I may not be able to banish an evil sorcerer to another plane of existence. I may not be able to persuade a majestic dragon that I'm its long-lost cousin. I may not be able to reply to an ambushing band of gangsters with a pickup line that goes so hard, one of them immediately falls prone and loses an entire turn, which is something that my wife's character did. What any of us can do, however, is look at what we have and make choices. And these choices have power, more power than we might realize. All it takes is the risk, doing it anyway, not knowing where the proverbial dice will land. In all my time with D&D, I've found one of the most important skills that makes a good DM is creating a safe place for players to take those risks, experiencing the thrills of success or the disappointment of failure, connecting with others in profound ways, and maybe learning something about themselves along the way. So, am I trying to convince each and every one of you that you should get involved with D&D and other forms of gaming? Yeah, I am. But I also know that not everyone can or really wants to. I still hope that there's something in my reflection that you can take with you as a tangible example of how powerful the values of equity and inclusion are, in a time where these values are vehemently attacked and demonized. I'll leave you with a moment where D&D reached me on a deeply spiritual level. I watched Fantasy High, the show I mentioned earlier, coming out of a very difficult time in my life, distancing myself from the Christian faith I grew up with, which ultimately meant estranging myself from a big part of the family who raised me, but could not accept my new agnostic faith. In Fantasy High, Kristen enters the void, in which all of the gods obtain their power and their knowledge. She asks the void, "Why do bad things happen to good people?" The void responds, "You mortal beings are the instrument through which the universe cares. If you care, it cares. If you don't, it doesn't." Thank you.